Hi everyone, I'm Aaron. Tonight I'm here with Andrew,
Hello.
Jonah,
Hello, everybody.
and Nick.
That's my name, don't wear it out.
Tonight the plan is basically to just talk about some model railroading projects that we've been working on recently. Some of them are completed, some of them are still works in progress, but hopefully this will give you ideas for your own layout. First off, we're going to talk about Andrew's recent project. This is one of my personal favorites since I am a really big fan of the Amtrak F59s.
Okay, so I started off, I had a spare ScaleTrains Tier 4 Gevo shell, and I wanted to take a lot of the detail parts off and add it. So down at the front, you can see the air hose, and there's the MU receptacle cable behind the plow. One of the other things I did was added windshield wipers. That was from some, I don't know the exact brand, but I added those on there. And then I painted the number boards black. At some point, I happened to have that, and I did white numbers for the 468. And yeah, so I also gave it I don't know what you'd call that, that charcoal gray or black color around the windows on the front, kind of like the surfliner. And the back, the MU receptacle cable back there is a Details West, so I threw it up on there, which is what they did with a lot of the time when they were parked and not using them. And the air hoses and stuff were from ScaleTrains. And then again, there's a Katy coupler. And I don't know if you can see back there, but I had to drill the grab irons in and painted them white, prototypical, and gave it a light weathering effect to it. So yeah, that's pretty much it with that one.
It's a stock Athearn model, more or less, right?
Yeah, and I also upgraded it to a ready-to-roll motor, which will be getting Lock Sound version 5 with a custom and accurate horn in the next couple weeks.
Nice. That'll be cool.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing, Andrew. Next we're talking to Nick
All
about
right,
a few of
thank
his
you, Aaron.
locomotive
First
projects.
off, we're going to look at a recent addition to my roster that I actually bought from Andrew. That would be Canadian National SD75i, number 5701. This engine is a old Athearn Genesis when they were still offered in kit form, and it was a straight DC model. I picked it up from Andrew, and I intended on running it with ScaleTrains CN Tier 4 Gevo that I've got on pre-order, as well as a GECX test unit humpback one for like a modern CN consist. So I knew I needed a decoder. So I went on eBay, and I just came across this Athearn Genesis PC board that already had a DH126 Digitrax decoder wired into it. So I just snagged that. And then using my extremely crappy wiring skills, I somehow got it right, and now it's running fine. I did a board transplant, took out the old DC board, and I put in this new one that I got. The main challenge was wiring extensions onto the front truck contact leads, because the way the DC board is set up, it has truck contact mounts at each end of the board. The newer Genesis ones only have truck contact mounts, I can't talk, at the rear end of the board. So I had to wire those on, and then also took some troubleshooting because the newer boards are set up differently with the motor mount contacts as well. So got it done in about 3 hours with some help from some friends, and runs like a charm now, and I can't wait to run it with my Tier 4 that's coming in. Next up, we've got this Blue Box SD40-2. This is a limited edition EMD Leaser, number 6047. This was sold in one of the Athearn Blue Box Special Edition sets right around, I think, the late 1990s. It came with a GP38-2 in the same paint scheme, number 769. I picked this setup off of eBay a couple months ago, and I've been making some adjustments, some edits to the SD40 so far, and the main thing right now is the custom painted handrails. The reason I wanted to do these is because when I was opening the handrail packaging after I got it off of eBay, I found that the factory had cut one of my metal handrails wrong. So I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go order some ready-to-roll SD40 handrail backstock off of eBay and paint them myself. Thankfully, I found a Rust-Oleum can of spray paint in my garage that was almost the exact same color as the body of these EMD demos. Rust-Oleum 7524 Safety Blue. Just for future reference, if you want to do rattle can for an EMD demo, it's pretty much, or EMD Leaser, excuse me, it's pretty much identical. So that's the blue that you see, and then I used a combination of Testors and Model Masters white paint for the ends and the handrails. Now, this took me a very long time because I made a crucial mistake. I did not prime the handrails at all. So all the paint had to adhere to was the flimsy plastic of these handrails. That's why it took me so long. It took a lot of different coats. The white paint was the main problem. I used at least three different types of paint. That's why they look kind of sloppy. It's because I had to layer on both acrylic and enamel paints, which I really didn't want to do, but it was the only way I could get them to stick properly. So I definitely will be priming the set of handrails I do for the GP38. Learned my lesson, but for an overall failure, I think it looks pretty good. Next up, I've been doing a little bit more work with decals recently, and these two locomotives are a good example of it. So what I did with these are two Burlington Northern predecessor road locomotives, Great Northern GP30-3001 and Burlington GP7 number 201. So what I did here is I patched both of them for BN. Not entirely, because I like to have them look like the predecessor roads in case I want to do a pre-BN op session. But then they've also got the little patches on the sides for me to be able to realistically run them in a Cascade Green consist. I used microscale BN woodchip car decals actually for these patches. I forgot when they released those, but I know it was over a decade ago. So it might be a bit hard to find, but the one I used in the Great Northern, or the two that I did, those were car end patch decals. They're stencils. And then the ones I used on the GP7 are car side reporting marks for the repainted cars. That's about it. I'm not planning to seal them up with dull coat or anything because I might want to take them off someday, revert them back to their original owners. That's also why I'm not patching them any further. I know the foamers are probably going to get on my case. Oh, CBQ201 became BN1522 or whatever it was. But I just like having the option to go back to their original states. And I also don't want to go through patching it to look exactly like the road specific detailing. That's about it for those ones. Last but certainly not least, I recently picked this up. This is a Proto 2000 BNSF GP38-2. It was being sold for $45 as a project engine. The listing said turns on but doesn't move. So I grabbed it knowing I could probably fix it up one way or another. I tore it apart. And what I found was it was not originally a cracked gear issue like I thought. It was actually the lubricant. The lubricant had solidified and formed a crazy glue-like bond between the brass worm gear and the brass contact squares at the top of the gear tower on the trucks. And that's what was preventing the motor from turning. It was getting power just fine, as was the rest of the engine. It was just those 2 points were impeding movement. So all I had to do was take the defective parts out and just drop in some blue box parts because the Proto 2000s use a cloned blue box mechanism. So I just dropped those in. I believe the specific parts I used came from an SD40. I had to trim one of the connector I had to trim the connector bars to get them to fit in there by about a centimeter. But other than that, it was a pretty easy fix, and now I've got a $45 nice-looking Proto 2000 38-2. The wonky details you're looking at on the right side of the cab are actually prototypical, at least for a couple years. In the early 2000s, the 2371 wore an all-weather window on the engineer's side and also had the sunshade shifted all the way forward, which is not something you see very often, as those things are very hard to move unless they are very well lubricated. So I decided that since Proto included enough details to make that work, they give you 2 sunshades, two all-weather windows, 2 plows, 2 sets of footboards. I just decided I'm gonna use all of them, and I'm gonna make it look like it did for 2 years before I was born. So that's about it. I plan on at least adding a Digitrack silent decoder. I might do lock sound at some point as well. But for now, I'll probably just order a silent decoder, throw it in there, and then I'll run it with the rest of the BNSF power I have. That's about it, Aaron. Thanks for letting me talk your ear off. Over to you, Jonah.
All right, thank you, Nick. I've got a few projects with me here today. Most of them relate to my freelance railroad, the MSR, which stands for Missouri Southern Railway. We're a small Class 1 located in the Midwest. We're roughly a similar size to the Kansas City Southern Railway. And we operate in a few different states, Missouri being our #1 state. Then we go south into Arkansas, Louisiana, a little bit into Texas, Tennessee. Up north, we kind of touch into Illinois and Iowa, a little bit into Nebraska. All right, so this first unit I have with me right here is a ScaleTrains Operator -9. This was the first MSR unit I painted, and probably one of my favorites. I've been slowly working on detailing it. I've put this PTC antenna array on the roof, and it has the ESU Essential Sound unit that comes stock with the ScaleTrains Operator units. And as far as paint goes, it's pretty well ready to go. I just need to get decals for it. And I'm going to try to work on printing my own before I commission anybody to make me them, just because I have so many engines I'm going to need decaled. It's easier if I can just make them myself. So moving on, my second MSR locomotive I've done right here is an SD70 ACC rebuild. These are exclusive to Norfolk Southern right now, but I'm a big fan of them and wanted to make one for MSR, and I may make more in the future. It's on an Athearn SD70 frame with Econami sound, and the shell is by Pacific Northwest Resins. They do custom resin shells, which are pretty good. Some of them are a little choppy, but this one turned out pretty well. And I'm still working on detailing it. It needs quite a bit, like handrails, MU hoses, and such. I just recently put LED lights on it, so it's a big plus. It's another unit that also needs decals. Then moving on, we've got this other, it's like an AC44 rebuild. I haven't quite figured out the name I want to go with it yet. It's kind of like a C6M, but not, it's a little different. And it's just mainly going to be a trailing unit. I'm going to detail it up. I'll probably put lights in it eventually. I don't think I'll do sound, just because it's not one of my better done units, but the paint turned out pretty well. But it'll look nice in the middle consist. And then my last actual MSR painted unit is this wacky thing. I call it an SD75D. It was an old Athearn SD75M. It was Genesis that was given to me without a cab. It was in pretty bad shape. So I just kind of took some spare parts I had laying around, made it look kind of like a B unit, similar to SD45-2B that Santa Fe had. And for the heck of it, I put ditch lights and a horn on it. None of them operate, but it's just kind of funny. And I also put SD70 Ace trucks on it because the original trucks that Athearn had were warped, so it derailed all the time. So the other unit I have over here with me is a ScaleTrains Driven Counter SD40T-2. This one's Rio Grande, and it is becoming MSR 356. A little backstory behind this one is it became Union Pacific in 2003, and then went to NREX in about 2008, and it sat there ever since. And I'm making it like MSR picked it up in 2019-ish, and just kind of fixed it up a little bit, restored the prime mover, and just made it operational. This is in pretty good operating condition. And some work I've done on this unit, I've faded and weathered it down some to look like what the real one kind of does, but not quite as bad. I've put custom antenna work on the roof, RV style AC units. I scratch built the antenna stands on the roof out of styrene as well. And I'm also adding ditch lights. Everything else is stock from ScaleTrains, including the sound, which is ESC V5. And this other little project I have here is the Athearn Blue Box P42. This one I have fully super detailed using Details West and Associates kit. I've also had to fabricate some of my own parts. And I basically just need to add LEDs, some more roof antenna details like the PTC, and it's going to get ESC V5. Another thing I've done to this unit is I've also replaced it with a Genesis motor so it runs nice and smooth. And the main reason I got it is I've always been a big fan of these Phase 3 P42s with the what I call the black bar style windshield, which was just one bolted on piece rather than two separate windows like the modern ones have. And it's going to become Amtrak 822, which is one of the current Phase 3 Heritage units out there on Amtrak right now. But they did them all in F40 style paint for some reason instead of doing any in the old classic P42 style. So I kind of wanted to recreate that, make it look like a what if Heritage unit. And then it's going to pull a passenger train, a Freelance one, on my layout, what I call the Springfield Flyer. They'll run from Kansas City to Memphis via Springfield. And that's about all I have to talk about for now. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks for sharing your locomotive project with us, Jonah. Next up, this is my Athearn ready-to-roll GP38-2 in BNSF's swoosh paint scheme. I've had this locomotive for quite a while. It's the primary locomotive from the local on my layout, so I decided to add some more detail to it. Previously I added Kato MU hoses to the front, but recently I added the BLMA RV style air conditioning units, as well as an antenna stand I scratch built on the roof. The antenna stand is just a thin piece of styrene on top of two grab irons, which are affixed to the roof through holes drilled with a pin vise. The antenna on the antenna stand is off of an old Athearn Blue Box P42. I also relocated the locomotive's horn from the cab roof to the side of the dynamic brake blister. I also had to paint the horn since it was orange previously. I also touched up the white highlights on the handrails since the paint that Athearn used was cracked and peeling in some areas. I'm going to eventually add ditch lights, but I haven't had time yet. I hope you enjoyed looking at the projects that we have. Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.